It's an age of resistance, an age of adorability, those cute little gelflings and podlings, an age of super creepy, gross skeleton people, an age of a crystal of truth, but most importantly, it is an age of the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance after show, which starts now.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Yes, hello, welcome to the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance after show. Very excited to be part of the panel here on the show, talking today about episodes 1, 2, and 3. So if you haven't watched all of those, go ahead and put a pause on us, open another window, get caught up, and then join us, including me. I'm Christian Bladt, joined by
Rachel Goodman
and
Angelica Trae.
And we're all here to talk about the Dark Crystal, and I think, as with so many Netflix shows, this one works really well if you're binging it. I think that we'll go through a lot of it, but I think that the first episode, at a full hour, really did a good job of setting it up. But if this had been another movie, that first hour would have been like 12 minutes. Like, everything that happened in it would have still happened, but it just would have been really fast. So let's start off with talking a little bit about each of our familiarity with this world. The Dark Crystal, of course, is originally a film from 1982. If you haven't watched that, but you're only watching the Netflix show, that's going to be okay, because I have not seen it in quite some time. And in fact, the first time that I ever tried to watch it, when it was a relatively new movie, and it was on HBO, I was horrified and couldn't watch more than a few minutes of it. So it took me a long time to come around. But Rachel, I believe you've never seen it.
I have never seen it,
Right.
as far as I know.
Right.
It was probably on TV when I was a little kid all
Right.
the time, and it looks like the characters were very recognizable to me.
Sure.
But no, I have not officially seen it, and I'm
Right.
very excited. I'm going to wait until I've finished binging this, and then I'm going to go and watch the original 82 movie.
But Angelica, a little birdie told me that you have seen it very recently.
Yeah, so I actually just recently rewatched it, so it's fresh in my mind.
Right.
And I didn't get a chance to see it when I was younger, but I did watch it when I was a little bit older, so I don't quite have the trauma that you might have.
Yeah, there was definitely some trauma
Yeah.
with it, because it's, and look, I mean, this series could also be very traumatic.
So you're telling me you saw them like on that first episode, and you're just like flashbacks, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was
Cold
glad that I
sweats.
didn't watch it with you ladies, because I definitely broke into a very cold sweat. I think I changed through 3 shirts. Just it was really uncomfortable.
The after show therapy with Christian.
We might need to do that. But and how do you feel this series? I know you've only seen the first 3 episodes. How do you feel it works as a complement to the film?
It was tonally and stylistically on point. Like so on point. The nostalgia factor here is going to be just off the charts for people. I think it's just really consistent with the original movie, and I think everyone's going to really enjoy it. Yeah, they slowed things down, but they're being more thorough, and it's such a beautiful world and beautiful set, costume, everything, design, that it's like, I don't know. It's from watching the movie, it was like, besides the CG, maybe like not a day had passed almost.
Right, go ahead.
It
Rachel.
definitely, I have not seen the 82 movie,
Sure.
but it definitely, to me, fits the flavor of a Jim Henson movie and a Jim Henson world.
Yeah.
In the sense, like, even listening to especially the Skeksis and listening to the way that they kind of, like, the way the scientist kind of, like, chuckles at the end of a lot of his sentences, or even, the Chamberlain, I'm like, okay, this sounds like Frank Oz, and this sounds like how we might have heard the Muppets sound, so it, to me, like, I feel like anybody who is a Jim Henson fan is going to watch this and feel nostalgia, even if they've never seen the 82 movie.
Right. Anytime there's any kind of evil character in any Henson property, I mean, you can think of Fraggle Rock, you can think of the original Muppet movie, and visually, I feel like Uncle Deadly from the Muppets is a very Skeksis-like character. I think he might actually be from the same species, just, thousands of years younger. But it definitely has that feel, and I do like that for the characters, the main characters, it is clearly all practical effects and puppets. And to me, it's very charming that occasionally when they're walking, you're like, oh, that's probably take 53 and that's the best one they got, and they're still sort of like hopping. I like that it's not perfect, you know. Go ahead.
I love the hopping. I love that they're actual puppeteers doing this. There's a charm to it that you don't see with CGI, in my opinion. Not that there's anything wrong with CGI, but in this particular world, I think it would have ruined it if we didn't get the puppeteers.
And it's great. And in our special segment, we'll talk about some of the voice cast, which is really all-star, the voice cast. But each character, the majority of the characters, are listed with 2 performers, and one of them is the puppeteer, and one of them is the voice character. Obviously, in the case of the original Muppets, at least back in the day, they were one and the same. They were the same person always. So, you know, that's why when you think about it, it's like you have like a few characters who sound the same on the Muppet Show, because it's like, well, yeah, those 5 were Jim Henson. But I think that it shouldn't be brushed over, the fact that, yeah, the puppeteer brings a lot to the character. And also you have these great voices. I know when we were talking about this earlier, I liken it to the difference of, you know, in the Star Wars prequels, you had CGI Yoda. And it's really cool because all of a sudden he's got a lightsaber and he's jumping around, he's doing all this stuff. But then in the most recent movie, The Last Jedi, you got to see Puppet Yoda again. And you're like, oh, yeah, I do love Puppet Yoda.
Yeah,
I prefer Puppet Yoda.
There's something about it. It's just charming.
Yeah. So I'm glad that they didn't just create, you know, all CGI characters, which I'm sure they would have looked terrific and they would have captured the same spirit, but I like the way that they move.
Yeah.
And so I find that great. And I think that they did a good job creating the world in the first episodes, but specifically, speaking of All-Star, Sigourney Weaver with the narration. Thanks for just coming in for a little visit, you know. And I think it did a good job for people who either haven't seen the movie in a while. They just wanted to kind of dive in, and, you know, I don't know. I mean, at least driving around Los Angeles, I see billboards for this show. So I don't know. Maybe a lot of people, like, they see an ad on a subway, they're like, well, what is that? And they just check out the show. It's good that you don't need to have seen the movie.
Truthfully, I was not familiar with the Dark Crystal, at least on a conscious level, until I looked it up and saw the trailer. So I feel like a lot of people, even if they have seen this, it's been a long time, and it would, you know, seeing it kind of reintroduces them to Henson and the way that it can be in this art form.
Yeah, I mean, the original movie is 37 years old, and look, most of the people in this building aren't 37 years old. So, you know, I think that just for whatever reason, I think, you know, and look, it was not financially successful. You know, there's a reason there aren't like 3 Dark Crystal movies to catch up on, you know, and there wasn't a tie-in TV series then, you know. So I think I'm glad, and that's kind of the nice thing about Netflix and a lot of these streaming services, is that you're able to, like, sure, let's do that. And this was developed as a prequel movie at one point, and then it shifted into this. And I don't know, I feel like the story, at least for these 3 episodes, has been able to breathe better than it would in a movie. I mean, you know, I said that that whole first episode would be like 12 minutes. These first 3 episodes, which is like almost 3 hours, that would maybe be half an hour in a movie. You know, you'd really have to jump a lot of it. And I like getting to know all of these characters. One of the things I want to do before we dive into those characters, though, is Rachel has a quick, handy reference of some of the different clans of Gelfling. There are 7, but there's 3 we're going to focus on today for our first 3 episodes. Yeah. As we go along, we might find it's very important that here's another clan. There's 4 other clans that I feel like we will have to talk about in future episodes of the After Show. But let's just focus on these 3 right now.
So the first one, we have Deet, who is from the Groton clan. She is in the cave, and they are the cave dwellers. The females still have wings, but yes, they are in the caves. Then we have the Vapras, which is Almadra and Brea and her sisters. And then the last one is the Stonewood Gelflings, which is Rianne and the ones who are guarding the crystal when we first enter this world.
Right, and we see in episode 3, not to jump too much ahead, but they actually go back to Stonewood, or at least Rianne does. So, yeah, and I think that those differentiations are very important, because you see the way that some of these clans treat each other. Very specifically, the way that people shun Deet because she's green. Yeah. And we were talking before the show. I kind of think she's the cutest. So, I'm like, you know what? I think that they're just being haters, that they wish that they were as cool and as cute as Deet is.
Actually, Deet is one of my favorite characters. Like, instantly when I saw her, I was like, yeah, especially her personality. But just kind of going off what you said, too, I feel like one of the major themes in all of this is that the Skeksis know that unity will be their downfall.
Right.
And so keeping knowledge and this sense of the 7 clans being able to be on the same page and get along, the Skeksis know that if this happens, that it's not going to be good for them. And so they love that there is this disharmony and this, inability for the clans to actually work together and kind of see each other as equals.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's what you find in any authoritarian society is
any
kind of discord that you can create, especially amongst the lower classes, and you basically keep people in their own lane. It's going to be great for you, and the Skeksis are obviously very, very good at that, right?
Politics,
right? I mean, look, you can extend that to the real world, but you can also extend it to just like cliques in high schools and things like that. I think that everybody can relate to this on really super important levels or just more casual levels, So, but in terms of the individual clans, Angelica, do you have a favorite of these characters? Do you maybe identify with any of the clans more so than others?
I mean, I guess like they're all so special in
That's
their
true.
own way. I don't know. I kind of like exploring each of them. Like obviously, I think the Groton are sweet, and we all love that like sweet, gentle group.
Yeah.
But of course, we have the Mountain Clan, which could you remind me of the name of that?
So Stonewood were the ones who were...
Those are warriors, right?
Yeah, they were the warriors, the ones
right, and it's the Mountain Clan, that's Brea and her family.
The Vapras.
The Vapras.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Vapras, we need the brain, the librarian, sophisticated group, and we see it here with some of our characters in that clan maybe questioning authority and things like that. And then, of course, the warrior clan. And if they all do come together, it's going to create that force to be reckoned with. And I don't know if I quite have a favorite just yet, but obviously I think our warrior clan is a little they're a little obnoxious, so they're probably my least favorite.
They're very sure of themselves and very quick to believe pretty much anything that they're heard. I would say that some of us on this panel might be a little quick to identify with Deet's clan, because just the idea of staying out of the sun. It's like maybe some of us recently on Instagram have pictures of when we maybe shouldn't have been out in the sun. I'm not going to point any fingers.
I feel attacked right now.
You shouldn't. No. This is very inclusive conversation.
I mean, I like being outside, but it's very difficult.
Take off the blindfold so that you then are at least aware that perhaps you are turning a little bit lobstery.
Probably a little bit.
Just
you guys, I just freckle at this point. freckle and burn. There's no tan that comes out of this.
I just burn and then I peel.
Cute.
And then I burn again.
Freckle and burn, of course, the famous refrain from Macbeth, from the witches. But what I do like about Deet is just, a creature is about to attack her, most likely eat her. Hi, I'm Deet. What's your name? She's never terrified and running away. She just wants to meet everybody. She wants to be everybody's friend.
Well, because she comes from that world where everything is innocent, and she was, literally tucked away in a cave where everybody did get along and everything was was harmony until the darkness.
Would you say that Deet comes from a safe space, if we're going to extend it in that sense?
I would say she comes from a very safe space.
Yeah, the safest of spaces.
And
quite the bubble.
Yeah, because everyone else, even if you look at the Vapras or the Stonewood, they are closer to the Skeksis, and we know the Skeksis are corrupt, and so they're the clans that are closer to that corruption are going to feel the effects of that. We see the farmers, their land has been affected, whereas Deet, she's in this cave, and she literally is kind of away from everything else, and I feel like they're the last clan to really feel the deep effects.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, is that where the darkening starts, though? Is like underground?
Well, I feel like they're the ones who are going to, theoretically, they're going to be aware of it earliest because there's clearly a problem. I mean, we've got multiple farmers showing up throughout these 3 episodes who just can't grow anything because, I mean, because Trae is basically sick.
It's starting from the earth.
Yeah, it starts from the crystal, and because the crystal of truth, is tied in to the world, you can see, and obviously, if it continues, the problem will be that this will happen to the entire world and everything that lives on it. Well, we'll dive into the characters in a moment, but first, I think Angelica has a very important message to share.
Oh, I have such an important message, you guys. So we want to thank you guys for for helping us become the ESPN of TV talk. Am I saying this right?
You are.
I think I'm saying this right. Perfect. So right now we aren't currently live. However, when we are, and if you're just watching the recording of this, we do appreciate if you guys hop on whatever platform you're on, whether it be iTunes or YouTube, and give us a little thumbs up or 5 stars. We really, really do appreciate it. And of course, we love reading your guys' comments. Sorry, I need another cup of coffee.
That's all right. No, hey, I mean, I think a lot of people watching need a cup of coffee because there's a lot of Dark Crystal to go through. And if anybody has ever watched any panel that I'm on, I've been on panels with both of you before, that if there are comments on the archive version, I usually can't resist in getting involved. I love the praise, but when people don't like something, that's usually when I'm way more focused. And I always try to respect the opinion, but there usually ends up being a back and
You're
forth.
You're just going to just throw your dukes up?
I mean, it just depends on what they're saying, you know?
Okay.
So it's like if they went after one of you two, I think I'd have to stand up, you know? I'd be like, hey!
There's a certain SHIELD panel.
There is the Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. panel. There are a couple things that I didn't like.
I already sense an argument about, like, the best clan. Like, I can already tell the best Gelfling clan is going to be a huge comment, just debacle. Yeah.
And I believe that, obviously the show premiered Friday, August 30th, so most of you are maybe watching this now. We'll be live, I think, for, let's see, episode 6 and 7. And then in the second week, so the first week of September, we'll have shows for 8 and 9, and then another one for 10. So we'll let you know when all of those are airing, and you can find it, and we'll give you all of our social media handles on the end. So that's how you can keep in touch with us. So there's a lot of different places to start. I would like to start with basically our hero for this particular story, which is Rian, who everything starts off great. He's there with Mira. They're having so much fun. And I thought it was really important that in the first few minutes, they dream fast so that we understand what it is and how it works.
And I really love how they handled that, too, because it wasn't even just that they showed how to dream fast, but that it was a very sacred thing to do. And just watching Rian's reaction when Mira suggests it tells me that it isn't something you just do lightly, and that if you are going to dream fast, you are sharing something very deep with another person or another, being, and you can't take it lightly.
Right. And I don't know, Angelica, does it make you think of anything else from perhaps in sci-fi?
Definitely.
Rachel already flashed the Vulcan.
We know where we're going here. We do.
We had this conversation. We had this conversation before the show, but it's fine.
The Vulcan mind meld.
Yeah, I want to. Yeah, I mean, look, from a storytelling device, it's great to have something like that. It's like, let me just share this information with you. Boom. Yeah. But I also think that, showing how important it is. And then when you also have, it's not called dream catching. I forget what it is when you take a dream fast and you embed it into the necklace like we saw in the during the tithing. So there's different levels and different ways to carry it out. So I think it was very important that we got to see that. And if you have what that is, it's
dream stitching.
See, I knew I didn't quite have it right. So yeah, dream stitching, and so that's when you're able to put it into like that necklace. And I just got a very strong suspicion that will be important again at some point in the next 7 episodes. So I think that really building up just sort of the relationship between the two of them, I think did a great job sort of setting the stage for Rian being on the run, at least for these 3 episodes, and, having that all-important weapon of knowledge, which would undo the Skeksis. So let's talk a little bit about their interactions. What did you think watching Rian and Mira's story? This is obviously the first episode because that's when we have both of them. But what did you think, Angelica?
Just watching their story, it was definitely kind of cute. And, you know, like what did we say, meet cute before
this? It's
this?
a big meet cute.
It was a little too romantic. I felt like there was definitely going to be trouble in paradise.
Yeah.
But it was adorable to watch while it lasted.
Yeah, they had a good episode.
And devastating. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
One episode.
No, they did a great job making us care about her. You know, I think that it's almost like if it had happened too early in the episode, you know, and we got to sense very quickly how important they were to each other. So, Rachel, your thoughts as it starts to become apparent what's going to happen to Mira in that first episode?
I felt like it was very foreshadowing.
Yeah.
The first thing that kind of gave it away to me is when they're playing around after stealing the food, and suddenly Rian looks and her clothes are on the ground and she's not there. I'm like, okay, is this signifying that something is going to happen to this poor Gelfling?
Yeah.
And like I thought, like I already, kind of thought something had happened to her, but then obviously she flies back up.
Yeah.
I knew that it couldn't last just because it was the first episode and it was just, they were too happy.
It just kind of opens with it too.
Yeah.
And you're just like, there's going to be some trouble here.
Yeah. There's going to be an adorable Gelfling-sized shoe that's going to drop by the end of the episode. And then just this terrible thing that Rian sees happen, which we'll really get down to the specifics when we talk to the Skeksis, but she becomes not a human sacrifice, but a being sacrifice, a Gelfling sacrifice, and they eagerly lap up her essence, which, just amongst the creepier sequences in this show, and there have been quite a few in these 3 episodes. The glee with which they're like, oh my god, this is the greatest thing that we ever could have done. And of course, Rian, obviously the flight instinct to get away from there, but you're just horrified by what you're seeing, and it's almost like what couldn't possibly happen the way it looks like it is. But what did you think about when we actually saw Mira just sucked into the crystal and her essence being drank?
My first hope was that it can somehow one day be reversed in this world. I am holding out for that.
Well, not through 3 episodes, but we'll see. Yeah.
But otherwise, I was just thinking, like, poor Rian. What could somebody possibly do in that situation other than, like, while you're forced to watch the one person you love more than anybody else evaporate?
Yeah. And did you feel for Rian, Angelica, when, it's like it's bad enough to have it happen, but then it's like you're watching it. You're getting to see every, like, painful detail unfold in front of you.
I mean, it was like you could hear the anguish, and obviously, we have these puppets, and it's, a little bit harder to express that stuff, but they did it so well, and I was in pain watching it and just seeing Mira, turn into essence, essentially.
Yeah.
Is that... what do we call that?
Ascension to essence.
Okay,
Essence. Sure. Let us know in the chat. You tell us what this process should be called.
Yeah, exactly.
But and it just shows the level of trust that everyone has in the Skeksis, because all the way through it, she's like actually asking them to help her, and it's like, hey, dummy. They're doing it to you. They're not going to help you. They're going to help you die a little bit faster, And this is one of several times where the Skeksis as a group they just get so carried away. They just sometimes, like, people are misunderstood and they are perceived as evil, and then other times you get characters that they just love being bad.
All of them. Even the ones that aren't as bad.
Yeah.
It's like varying degrees of badness. Even the ones you want to kind of be okay with, you don't like.
Yeah. And I was a little impressed for a group of beings that were sitting pretty for a while. For the scientists to be able to manipulate the crystal like that was kind of impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I
not
think,
cool, but impressive.
Let's actually focus on the Skeksis right now, because that makes the most sense. We get the sense that it's been about 1,000 years that they've been babysitting the crystal, and like in the first hour, they started figuring out, like, oh, how can we use this for evil? Like, let's use this for our own personal gain. And there obviously is a whole group of the Skeksis. There are, I think, 3 of them that seem to be the most important at this point. But you do have some that you feel like it's a little bit of the mob mentality. Ones that I think are identified by name, but they're not the most important ones, where they object a little bit. That's like, no, we can't steal the essence from someone. And then it's like, no, I think we can. And then they're like, all right, well, let's just see what this is like. You know what I mean? I think that no one thus far through 3 episodes is going to take a stand against the others. I mean, but do you feel like that's an accurate way to summarize their group their group interaction, Angelica, that there are some that maybe have a little bit of a problem, but they don't want to rock the boat?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like that scene a little bit and that aspect of it because, you know, I think a villain kind of character or villain group it's good to have that bickering within it and to show that there are those gray areas there, because when it's just pure evil, you know, doom, it's harder to believe. So it was kind of nice to see, you know, a little bit of like a maybe moral conflict or questioning there. And then, you know, I think even one of the Skeksis pointed out that it's greed and stuff like that, and pointing out what they're doing wrong. And so I liked that, and it showed some internal conflict, which in turn could show a weakness potentially.
Jonathan, I remember that the other day you had a sketch of like a young Skeksis. I don't know if you can find that, and there's no rush really because we're going to talk about them for a few minutes. But what we learn is really just how much they've changed. Look, it's been 1,000 years, and they've been using that time like leeching energy out of the crystal to basically keep themselves alive.
So the thing with me and the Skeksis is that I don't think they were ever good now that I've seen all, you know, the 3 episodes.
Sure.
What they strike me as being politicians. And not to say that every politician is bad or that every politician...
Well, you can, you know, here's what you can say. Not every politician is good.
Yeah. So like a lot of what I feel like they're doing is that they are there to kind of not necessarily trick people, but they will word things a certain way with the general public, and they will kind of present things to be in their favor. And so even if we look at Aughra, the way that they presented things to her, we didn't actually see it. They were kind of shown it in the beginning, but we get this idea that they were able to trick her. And if they were able to trick her, then what's to stop them from tricking anybody else? If you can trick the all-seer. And so my thing with them is, even when we watch them, you know, kind of argue, not necessarily argue amongst each other, but bicker and like show these different levels, I feel like it's just a group of politicians in one room, like arguing over how they can kind of like get away with certain things without pushing too far.
Well, I think the thing here is maybe they didn't even originally trick Aughra. You know, it's like we're looking at this, you know, sketch of a young Skeksis, and they look like cute little fairy
they're like
birds.
Pixies, and
they're cute. And what we're watching here is survivalism happen. You know, where it's like over this course of 1,000 years, there's this descent, and you start getting more and more desperate, and you know, the more I'm sure they're alive and they have to take from this life force or this source here, they watch, like, you see yourself maybe like descend into that, and like morals start getting gray, and I think that's the Skeksis we see now.
Yeah, and I mean, look, it's an oft-used phrase, but it's perfectly summarizes the Skeksis. I believe it's attributed to Lord Acton in the 19th century. It's that power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely. So they were powerful to begin with, but then it's like, oh, this all-powerful crystal, can you keep an eye on that? Hey, what do you think that crystal can do? Let's find out. And they get 1,000 years of, you know, and maybe they don't even, I mean, basically when Aughra speaks to the crystal tells her, like, yeah, right away they started messing around with all this. But in all honesty, they probably at first were like, okay, yeah, let's, you know, I think that they got tempted, and they had to see what they could possibly do for themselves with it.
I personally feel like they were never good, and over, 1,000 years, they progressively became more corrupt.
Yeah.
But I get this feeling that even in the beginning, they just knew the right things to say to Aughra that would allow them to gain that power.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the comparison to a politician or any kind of con man or con person or con being, to extend it to
yeah.
the world
Wow.
of Thrawn, because there are no people there, at least that we haven't met yet. What were we going to say?
Nice
Angelica?
word use.
I try.
Yeah, beings. So, I mean, I was just going to say here, just going off of the survivalism thing, it's like watching your, I guess, and I don't know the entire origin story of Skeksis. Like, we just hear a little bit and get a snippet of this.
Yeah.
But it might be that their whole species is dying out, or their, race or whatever is dying out, because we don't see any baby Skeksis.
Well, yeah.
They're,
I mean,
they're like, it's like pigeons.
are these like 10
You
to
ever see a baby
12?
pigeon? Yeah.
Yeah, these 10 to 12, are they the only ones?
Can
Yeah.
they reproduce? And so they have to endure this like everlasting life.
Also, like 1,000 years ago, were there like 50 of them, and then they kind of killed each other off? I mean, there's a lot of questions that we don't actually have the answers to.
Or
but-
does the crystal
did-
make them not able to have
And
babies?
they did say, too, that they're not from Thra. And so
Right.
where did they come from? Are there more of them somewhere else in the universe?
Well, let's focus on the 3 Skeksis that are the most important. Obviously, the Emperor is just sort of there to, basically carry out all the decision making. So, as with any figurehead, it's the one with the most power, but the one that is the most manipulative and also easily manipulated. Because if you look behind the scenes, it's really what the Chamberlain wants to happen is what happens, So the scientist figures this out by almost getting sucked into the crystal himself. And then they basically pitch it to everyone. And, as I said, we had the people not the people, but we had the Skeksis who were upset about it and like, oh, I don't know about this. But as soon as they figured out what they could do, like, this is great. Let's, give ourselves this life essence. So the scientist basically comes up with the process, but of course it gets damaged during Mira's sacrifice. And as we see, the scientist squirrels away one little vial of the essence, and he puts it behind the very effective lock snake that I think that they should actually be marketing those. And I'm not talking about replicas. If they could figure out a way to have a snake actually lock things up, I think that's perfect. But the Chamberlain, being the Chamberlain, knows how to hypnotize a lock snake, and God, they looked so delicious, didn't they? Because he jumped right into it. So obviously that ties into Rian's story, which is that I need to get this essence because the Skeksis the Chamberlain instantly comes up with like, well, we just framed him for the murder, obviously. He saw this. Nobody's going to believe him. They're going to believe us. They always believe me. They always believe Chamberlain. And I think that there's a couple different parallels to the real world, Angelica. It's like you are inclined to believe your leaders, but you're also inclined to believe information when you see it. So if you have a leader, I don't know, an emperor, a king, a prime minister, maybe a president, that whatever they say, there are certain people that just go with whatever they say. But also, like, we were talking earlier before the show that if something's trending on social media, you're immediately like, oh my God, somebody died just because one person tweeted it. And it's like, we're very quick to believe things, especially bad things. So if the Chamberlain's like, I heard that Rian murdered Mira, everybody's like, oh my God, that's great gossip. I need to go tell everyone about it. What are you going to say, Rachel?
Only that it's interesting because we were watching all 3 of the episodes.
Yeah.
What it really said to me is it seemed to be very representative of the fact that people feel safe with the easier information to believe. And the Gelflings have never really been given a reason to doubt the Skeksis. And so the easiest thing is, let's just believe what they're saying. Why would they lie to us? So they haven't seen the truth. And then anybody who is a truth seeker like Brea, they're really like knowledge and truth is not that's like the most dangerous thing to the Skeksis. And so it's like very like everything's locked down from the Gelflings, and we see that even with the library in that carriage scene, and how it was just no Gelflings can go to the library ever.
Right. Yeah. No. We'll definitely talk about that when we talk about Brea. But back to the earlier point, Angelica, sort of your thoughts on this. The point that they're making about just misinformation and, just using their power to really just for their own ends. And at this point, it's like covering their own shriveled, bony parrot asses, basically.
I can see how you feel about the Skeksis here.
I love them all.
Wow.
Yeah, I can't pick a favorite. I love them all so much.
Yeah, no, I definitely think they're spreading... Yeah, they're spreading that misinformation because they can't have the Gelflings not believe them. And two, now they realize that the Gelflings are a life source for them. Yeah. So they need to keep them close and need to keep them comfortable.
Right. So when they get... Rian's friend's name is Gurjin, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So when they get a hold of him, I mean, that's somebody that you probably should kill. But at the same time, you're like, yeah, but we know he's going to be delicious. So we're going to hang on to him. And then also when they send Rian's father, the commander, the general, off to go find him, and they promise to help Rian, and sure, they make this deal with him, and it's like, great, and we'll get them both back, and then we'll eat both of their essences, because that's the Skeksis. That's what they do. So I think that the way that they approach other creatures is just complete disregard for everything else. They're only looking out for themselves. But then that extends within the ranks of the Skeksis, because you get back to the Chamberlain, who he's trying to steal the essence. He gets caught, and somehow the scientist is the one who ends up with his eye being eaten out by the pepper beetle. So I'm just sort of wondering, Angelica, what you think about, has the Chamberlain built up this level of trust, one, with the rest of Thra, with the Gelflings and everything, but even within the other Skeksis, the fact that as soon as he said, no, the scientist is lying, here's what really happened, they just immediately like, well, okay, well, obviously the Chamberlain's telling the truth.
Yeah, I mean, it's been working for them so far, so why question that? Yeah. You know, and try to bring it down. What I want to know is how they would, you know, if I'm setting aside the movie and all my knowledge there, how they could maintain this Gelfling diet now, this Gelfling essence diet for the long term, you know?
Well, so, I mean, there's a lot of them, so they'd be good for a while. You know?
For a while, but not forever, just like the crystal.
Right, exactly. I mean, and they're completely disregarding the fact that, look, the crystal doesn't look good. You know, it's not, it's certainly seen better days, and they should remember.
Definitely feels like there's a parallel here to something today.
So, I mean, could it possibly be that, you know, that there's a problem with our crystal? You know, our Earth, crystal. Our planet is polluted and just it's been made sick by I don't know, perhaps the Skeksis in charge of our crystal.
And using up resources and not thinking about the long term. That's a genius idea. Good job, Chris.
No, I don't. That's not how I look at the world. I just live in the caves and I don't get out. Oh,
you're a Groton?
Yeah, I'm totally a Groton. Ooh. Like hashtag Team Groton. But so I think that, you know, we'll obviously see, and Chamberlain seems to think that he and Scientist are like bros again because he gives them those little stitched mouth creatures, and I think Scientist is like, yeah, okay, that's fine, yeah, we're good, buddy. But it's obviously he's like, he's not going to forget. But I do think that his new eye is kind of badass because it's sort of like one of those like jeweler's lenses or whatever. I think, oh, he can see way better now with that thing than he could with the eye that got eaten. Before we run out of time, we do have some more characters to run through, and we should talk about Brea, who obviously the Henson Company is now owned by Disney, but back in 1982 they weren't. However, there's something very Disney princess about Brea. One, she's a princess. Two, she's inside reading all day, and we know if you're a princess and you read all day, you've got, what did we talk about earlier in this show, that very dangerous weapon, knowledge. So obviously, Rachel, Brea is certainly, you know, she's a member of the royal family, she's a princess, but she's a little bit of an outcast, I would say, because who wants to read?
Yeah. I mean, so it's not even just that, but I feel like she's the younger sister. Yeah. She's always had to prove the most to her mother. And I feel like that alone has made it harder for her and made her more of an outcast. But then, too, there is that drive for knowledge. And I feel like that's something that she might have just been born with. And it's just very unique compared to everybody else that we've seen among the Vapras anyway.
Yeah. What do you think, Angelica, about Brea's relationship with her mom, the Almadra, and of course Tevra and Celadon? There's the cool sister, And then there's like the not cool sister, but she's got to be the tough one because she's going to be the Elmadra one day. That, of course, being Celadon.
Yeah, well, there's definitely the adversity here a little bit and the sibling rivalry, but not quite. It makes it a little realistic, honestly. Just seeing, we see Celadon. Right, Celadon is the eldest.
That's the future Madra.
And she's got a lot of pressure on her, on her shoulders. Like, she's going to have to take over the reins after, Mother. And this is a lot of stress for her. And she kind of projects that stress, on Brea, our youngest here. And then, Tavra is just very patient and like kind-hearted seeming and very soft-spoken. Like, you could tell she doesn't really speak unless she has something of meaning to say.
Right. Both of her sisters get angry because they're like, you're being quiet, and the only time you're ever quiet is when you have something really important to say.
Yeah, and then it's funny because then Tavra turns around and says, you're both more alike than you realize.
I know, and I did like how angry Brea got, but it's like, yeah, well, she knows both of them really well. She can talk to both of them. She's able to be the mediator.
Oh, that scene where she's like, you're stubborn. She's like, she's the most stubborn.
I know. I thought that was very cute.
What I loved is Brea asking, well, if I'm so much like her, why can't I talk to her? And it was that typical, well, if you have so much in common with somebody, sometimes that's exactly why you can't talk to them.
That butting heads.
Yeah.
Right. And so we get a bit of a supporting cast around Brea. We have the librarian who knows a lot and trying to keep some information from. Loves the fact that she likes to read, but the fact that she retains the knowledge, processes it, and comes up with educated hypotheses about the world, he gets very upset. But in like trying to keep her from things, he gives her lots of vital information that helps her go on a lot of different things. So I find the character of the librarian is actually very funny because it's like, if you had just kept your mouth shut, she probably wouldn't have figured a lot of this out.
Well, and also, it isn't even just that, but he was bringing her books.
Right, yeah,
and
exactly.
fulfilling a lot of her requests. So it isn't like he was completely against her learning.
Right.
It's just that when she started asking the tougher questions,
Right.
he was like, yeah, no, but he brought her the books.
I know. Well, it's just like, if somebody wants a stack of 12 books and you're a librarian, you get super excited. Which is a great library. It's got the little spiral staircase and everything.
Oh, that was beautiful. And it's all fun and games, right, until you demand the truth.
Right, exactly. And he's just like, oh, no, I can't share that. I really enjoyed the interaction that Brea had in episode 2 with Elder Kadia, and just the very quick, like, I'm going to just drop my flashy money here and switch our drinks. And the fact that in episode 3, we see the extent to which Elder just doesn't remember anything.
I was expecting a Princess Bride moment with that, and that it
They
would
were
turn
both
out
poisoned.
they were both poisoned, but that somehow it wouldn't affect her.
Right, exactly. I did wonder about that.
Yeah.
I was just like, am I overthinking this? But
Yeah.
it just showed how quick on her feet she is, and she like knew that we can't trust these people. But obviously, she's also helped by Annika, who we see in episode 3 has taken advantage of the fact that Elder Kadia doesn't remember anything. She's like, "Wait, I'm an elder now." She's like, I gave myself the promotion that I've deserved for a very long time.
I kind of loved that moment,
I thought that was great.
Because Kadia just seemed a little condescending, to be honest.
Just a bit, yeah.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like, look, he was going to try and make Brea forget everything that she knew, like not just about the symbol and everything she was trying to find out. She just wouldn't have remembered anything if she had drank that.
Yeah, not
and
cool, Kadia.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like the whole thing is that obviously we see what happened to him.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if she had had that potion? It would have done. What would they have done to him? And my thought is they probably wouldn't have done anything to him because he's he would have come up with some reason for protecting her from harming herself, and then they would have just let it go because ignorance is better than power.
Her mother would have been upset, but would have known he did it because she was asking the wrong question.
Yeah.
So if she had kept all those books closed and just worried about being pretty, then everything would be fine.
Yeah, and when I say ignorance is better, obviously in his mind.
Well, yeah. No, I think you mean for the world. I think ignorance is very important, actually.
We see how it is.
Yeah. Angelica's a little triggered.
Knowledge is power, okay? Let's just butt heads here. We're going to fight this whole time about this.
But that's why it's so funny that her mother gets so mad that she did this, because obviously that's, there's a problem. It's like, yeah, but he was trying to do it to me.
Yeah.
And so she ends up in the Order of Lower Service, which I love the name of. It's just like, oh, yeah. And having to bathe the podlings was very hysterical. Definitely some lighthearted moments needed on a show that can be a little heavy. And first of all, the podlings are adorable. But watching them want to play in the dirt and run around, it's just like, well, anybody who's ever given a child a bath, and I give 2 children a bath most nights, they're my children, by the way. Don't assume other things. So I thought it was just very reminiscent of like, okay, yeah, this is like just trying to give any kid a bath.
And just like a note on the podlings, so we were watching with the subtitles, and literally it was like farting noises when they were like spitting out their tongue. Yeah. I was dying. I was like, oh my god.
Yeah. It was a cute little moment, and it was definitely very, very like playful and lighthearted.
Yeah, but clearly Brea realizes like, yeah, this is not for me. I don't need the little jingle hat. I got to get out. And that's, I think, a great moment for Tevra, her sister, is like, oh yeah, good for you. You got to go do your thing, you know? And so we'll pick up her story when we talk about episode 4. But one of our other big heroes, of course, is Deet, who might be some people on this panel's favorite me. But I think that her story is good. And obviously the importance is sort of, her story really begins with the tree, right, Rachel? So your thoughts is when we're sort of introduced to that and how you think that might factor into the rest of the series.
Well, okay, so seeing like that quick montage of visions, and knowing that there's a prequel, and I don't want to get in, or knowing that there's something that comes after the prequel, I don't want to get too much into prediction territory, but just the fact that we see Deet and we see that the darkness has corrupted her in this vision, it just gives me ideas that if she does not succeed, you know, obviously this will happen to everybody we know, but like, I guess the whole thing though is that for somebody who has been tasked for such a burden, she is handling this in a very positive light. Yeah. And she is still very chipper and loving. If this had been me and I had gotten these visions and suddenly my family was like, oh, yeah, off you go.
Go above ground for the first time ever.
To be fair, maybe she interpreted the visions differently, you know? Maybe she went through a punk phase with the black eyeliner.
Maybe, but I just don't think I would be as cheerful as she is. But hey, that's a testament to her and how she's handling this.
But fortunately for Deet, she has Hup, who is another one of my favorite characters from the time we meet him. And obviously just helping her, you know, survive some of the creatures that they encounter, but also just the simple fact she'd never been above ground. She didn't know the difference between the sun and the moon. Talk a little bit about Deet and Hup's interaction, Angelica.
Deet and Hup they're such a fun, like, duo and like a good dynamic here, because Dee is so not quite like, I guess she's kind of earnest, but also very just innocent. And then we have Hup here, he wants to become, you know, this warrior, and so it's a really lighthearted duo for what they're trying to do and what they're trying to accomplish here. And it's that bar fight scene was just it was like character defining for Hup, and it's I don't know. I like this couple here. I'm not saying like I ship them or anything, you know, because I think Deet needs to focus on her journey here.
Right. She doesn't need to get slowed down by this stuff. But I will say that Hup immediately takes a liking to her. But I would say that Hup is definitely shipping the two of them from the moment she gives him a kiss, because all of a sudden it's like, wait, what?
Yeah,
is that happening? All right. So you know what? I'll go to jail for you, whatever.
Yeah, that face that he makes is just perfect.
I know, and that's the great thing about the, you know, the Jim Henson Company and their ability to make, you know, the Muppet characters are not particularly expressive, but the fact that they can also make these creatures that you can really see what it is. Now, I know, Rachel, the sort of brief interaction, the meet not so cute between Deet and Rian has you spinning off in your own direction.
Yeah, I'm totally loving that meet cute. Yeah. And they're the two that I'm now shipping, even though I'm really upset about Mira's death, if she does not come back.
So you're conditionally shipping them. If Mira stays dead, okay, I guess he should find love somewhere else.
Yeah.
But if she does stay dead, then if she doesn't, then you obviously want them to get back together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. But yeah, they have the very sort of very rom-com interaction. Would you go so far, Rachel? This is for our fans of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Do you think they could be the Fitz and Simmons of this show?
Nobody could be the Fitz and Simmons.
I figured that was the answer, but I didn't.
Fitzsimmons is my OTP, so that's a hard.
And,
fair enough.
Yeah.
And winding down with the characters, we talked a little bit about Aughra, who, in a way, at one point was the boss of the Skeksis. But now they're like, shut up, you don't know what you're talking about, except she totally knows what she's talking about. So that's why they throw her out of the castle, and they're like, yeah, you don't get in there. But of course, I like how she plays into this reputation that she has. So basically the two creatures guarding her, she's like, yeah, if you don't leave me alone, I'm going to like eat your eyes or whatever she even says. I forget exactly what it is because there's obviously other eye eating in this series. But I just like that. And then they're like, all right, get out of here. And she's just like, oh, look, the crystal is right here. Great. So I wanted to talk to both of you about Aughra just in general and what she's able to learn from the crystal.
I love Aughra. I love her.
Yeah.
She's great. I think she really does play off of the tales here because from what we see, she's clearly not as all-knowing and omnipotent as her, like story or history that's spread throughout, all of Thra has been. So we see that she doesn't even know what's going on, and she has to discover it, and she has to play off of, her reputation here and sort of take advantage of that so that she can do what her original job was, which is guarding this crystal.
Right, and I think that obviously she gets all the information she needs. She sees exactly what they did, how they sacrificed Mira, and she's like, "Oh, this is terrible," and she sets off on her own course of action. Just any final thoughts on Aughra before we jump into our special segment?
Just that it was amusing that the Skeksis did not want her to go anywhere near that crystal, and conveniently she walks right past it. I just thought that was, kind of hilarious.
Was very convenient. Yeah, but I thought it was funny. I was just like,
you would think they would have had it like locked down in a place where they knew she was not going to go anywhere near.
But again, they're so sure of themselves. I thought it would have been funny if she just walked right past it and then all of a sudden like backed up like, hey, there it is.
She kind of did that.
So for our special segment throughout the course of this show, we're going to go through some of the voice cast. We're only going to talk about a couple right now so that because we're pretty much out of time. But I know from the very beginning, Rachel, there was somebody you were very excited about. It's not someone that I'm familiar with, but I wanted you to share your excitement.
So I am a huge Outlander fan. Yes, I know Droughtlander is upon us, but not so much because Catriona Balfe, who plays Claire in Outlander, is also Tavra, and it's really kind of funny for me because every time I hear her as the character, I hear Claire in Outlander, and my brain can't separate it. So I'm really excited about her, but then also Mark Hamill as the scientist. Those were my two, hey,
no,
Mark
that was
Hamill.
great. I mean, because yes, everybody knows Mark Hamill from Star Wars, but also, I mean, he's done a lot of voice work, but his voice of the Joker and the Batman animated series and a lot of the animated movies they've had, it's hard to really compare anybody else with that. So.
He does evil so well.
He does, yeah. But I think because the dark side is very strong within the real Mark Hamill.
Hashtag not my Luke.
Well, no, I don't know about that. Yeah, but yeah, I would say that the scientist is not my Luke. Just a couple of the other big ones. Taron Egerton is Rian, who a lot of people know from the Kingsman movie, the two Kingsman movies, and also he was Elton John in Rocket Man. And he sang those songs in that movie. So cool. Maybe he's going to break into song in this show. We don't know. And then a couple of the other major characters, not a particularly familiar name, but Deet is an actress named Natalie Emmanuel, who is one of the leads in Hulu's Four Weddings and a Funeral, which is on right now. Maudra Farah, who is the Maudra of the wooded area. That's Lena Headey from Game of Thrones, also the TV version of Sarah Connor from the Terminator TV show. Elder Kadia was Eddie Izzard, and that was a pretty great a great appearance because he's fantastic. And the librarian is Toby Jones, who, if you Google him, you'll know who he is. There's some the other one I want to mention is the Chamberlain, of course, is Simon Pegg. So we'll have some others that we'll talk about in coming weeks, and we'll talk about some of the actual puppeteers as well. But we are out of time now, and if you found this episode You should be able to find our conversation also for episodes 4 and 5 after you watch that. You'll find it in the same place you found this. But until then, Angelica, where can people find you?
So I'm Angelica Trae, and the people can find me on most social medias at Trae, AYYTRAE, and Instagram at Angelica Trae.
And Rachel, where can people find you?
Everyone can find me on Twitter at Rach Goodman or on my author pen name at Rachel Radner Author on Instagram.
And you can find me, Christian Bladt, on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. And if you want to find out more about some of the real-world problems with the real-world Thraw and the real-world Crystal and the real-world Skeksis, check out the Trump Report, Tuesdays at 4 Pacific, right here on AfterBuzz TV. That's all the time we have for now, but we'll see you guys next time.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.